Welcome to the Mark Divine Show. I'm your host, Mark Divine, and I'm excited to have you join us today. This show is not for you just to listen passively. I want to spark action, inspire transformation. Each episode is designed to help you grow as a leader, break through your personal barriers, and create a lasting impact in the world. I'll be joined by experts who are dedicated to unlocking potential, embracing greatness, and inspiring change. Together, we explore mental toughness, resilience, purpose finding, and consciousness evolving, always with a daily practical application. So thanks for tuning in. Your bold actions today will shape the world of tomorrow. In today's episode, we're joined by Jill Schulman, who's a leading expert on the intersection of neuroscience, psychology, and courage. Jill's a recognized coach, speaker, and consultant specializing in helping individuals and organizations harness the power of bravery to overcome fear, build resilience, and achieve high performance. She's got a background in neuroscience and has worked with top leaders and athletes to unlock their potential by understanding how the brain responds to risk and challenge. So get ready for a deep dive into the science of bravery. Learn to embrace courage in every aspect of your life with Jill. Jill, thanks so much for joining me today on the Mark Divine Show. Jill, thanks so much for being here and for coming in person. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, it's not too far. Just live in San Clemente, so about a 30-minute drive.
Yeah, you know something about bravery? Did that come from the Marine Corps? Or were you always brave?
I don't know. I think it's been a journey as I've learned more about it and become more brave. There's been a lot of times I've been pretty scared, but I've always just loved a challenge. Like, sometimes people ask me like, why'd you decide on the Marine Corps? I'm like, well, because it's the hardest. That's the one I wanted to do. So I guess there's a little part of me that I always just liked the challenge, crazy challenge.
If they had let women in the SEALs back then, would you have taken a run at it?
I don't know.
Because that's the hardest.
Of course. I mean, I'm saying overall branch, right? If you can say overall like Marine Corps versus Navy, I mean, yes, I would say Navy SEALs so much harder. I don't know. That would probably not. That's.
Well, thank you for your service, by the way. I find we can go anywhere, right, with this conversation because I'm passionate about bravery and courage and those things and neuroscience as well. So I'm excited to talk to you. But one of the things that I've noticed amongst a lot of academics, and I know that you're not just an academic, right? Neither am I.
Yeah.
But is that generally they'll study something that is the opposite of what they are, right? So like you see this a lot in emotional development and whatnot. Like they had a really traumatic childhood and they had no self-esteem, and so they studied self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious, do you have any experiences where you weren't brave and you experienced like the opposite of that and you wanted to close that gap through your research?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's actually really what I'm the most interested in. And right before I came here, I just had a meeting with one of the leading researchers on bravery, and we were talking about what is the body of evidence. And really what's established in academia is there's clear definitions of what bravery is and what people define as brave or courageous acts. There's also research done on what people say that they do in order to be brave. But what I'm interested in doing is really figuring out, like, let's say someone is like moderately brave, and I think of it as more of a spectrum, and someone wants to become braver. Can you teach them specific habits and skills that can make them braver? Now, I know in my heart that you can. I'm confident, but
we know that from our military training.
Exactly. But that's the one area that in academia that is lacking.
In fact, I agree with that. In fact, Colonel Grossman's work was really about that. And the military, I mean, they understood after reviewing what happened in World War I that we needed to train bravery. And how do you do that? Through desensitization on one hand from things that kept people in a state of fear, and also familiarization with things that were the unknown, right? And so they had them like doing, bayonet charges against instead of a hay bale, something that looked like a human being, right? To desensitize one side, which is, the angst of killing a human being, and then to give them familiarity with what it's like to attack a human body, which is different than a bale of hay.
They're not doing it for the very first time. They've got some of that familiarity.
Yeah, you just inch closer and closer and closer. It's like crawl, walk, run. That's interesting. So here's a question. Is courage the same as bravery?
I'm still trying to figure that out. And I think there's definitions kind of all over. Like I just like the word brave better, like being brave and building your bravery. But I mean, I think they're close cousins. I mean, how do you define the two differently? How do you?
Well, it's a good question. I think, I guess the way I would pose the question is, can you have courage without bravery? Or maybe even backing it further, like what are the qualities of bravery and what are the qualities of courage?
And really how you define it. I mean,
right. And there's also moral, you have the moral and the physical aspect, right?
Yeah, right.
I think they are closely related, and I agree with you. Like even Socrates talked about it as a spectrum. And so on the far extreme, you have bravado, right? And so bravado and bravery share the same, root word. And so some could claim that bravery is actually kind of an extreme forward of courage that verges on recklessness.
Right.
And
which goes too far.
Which could go too far. And then the other, you have cowardice.
Right.
And so courage is kind of like somewhere in the middle, and it can go a little bit, either direction depending upon the circumstance of the individual, but it's not recklessness and it's not cowardice. So it's something else.
Well, and I always say there's stupid brave, and then there's the
hold my beer brave.
There's the, hey, I dare you. Are you brave enough to do 5 shots of tequila right now? Like that's just stupid brave, right?
That's stupid brave.
So, I completely.
I think that's just stupid.
Yeah, it's just stupid.
There's nothing brave about that, right?
Yeah. So I think, and for me, bravery is really defined as, are you willing to act even though there's discomfort or fear? So that's really what I'm interested in. Because there's some people that are, I was just having this conversation.
And when is there not discomfort or fear?
Well,
I mean, very rarely.
Yeah.
Anytime you're doing something new or challenging, right? Like in the military, pretty much everything we do, there's going to be discomfort and fear.
But I think it's always based on what is the act. And that is, for me, getting up on a stage in front of thousands of people, that doesn't take bravery for me because that's comfortable for me. But for someone who's never, and for a lot of people.
Pill for that?
Right. For a lot of people, that's the scariest thing like ever. Right. Or getting out. We were just talking about like surfing. I live in Southern California. I once wanted to try surfing. It was not a great experience. Right. So I would take bravery for me to get out and try to do those waves again. So I think bravery is when you think about what is the goal, what is the task, what is the skill that you want to do, and do you personally have some fear or discomfort there? And it's taking action in the presence or despite the fear. That's really what bravery is. It's getting out of your comfort zone,
Yeah. I think that bravery is not the absence of fear, but it's acting in the presence of fear.
Yes. Exactly.
And acting anyway.
Yeah. Exactly. That's how I define it.
That's interesting.
And can I add one more thing? You were saying about like, the bravado versus like the cowardly. I really want to focus on helping people. Like, what is that important, meaningful goal that's intrinsically motivated? Like, what is the thing that you want to bring greater value to the world or become your best self? What are those goals, but you hesitate to move toward them because of some fear? So, because someone could say like, am I brave enough to go in and rob a bank? Well, that's not good. That's, again, that's stupid brave or doing things that are not so good. So I'm really interested in asking people like, what do you really want? What do you want to accomplish? What is the thing that you've always desired, but you're too scared to be able to do it? Right. Is it starting your own company? Is it applying for that promotion? Is it walking up to that person, introducing yourself across the board?
Right. Interesting. Dr. Hawkins treats bravery as a consciousness level, consciousness itself, right? And he says this is it's the doorway between the negative energies of pride and anger and fear and shame and guilt, and the more positive energies of acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, love, right? And so anytime, and he goes through some great examples, right, in some of his books, but anytime you're in a state of like anxiety or fear because of either the unknown or you've got a worthy thing that's really challenging you, right? Until you can get to courage, you won't move forward.
Yeah.
Right? And then courage, though, you're able to access power. as opposed to what he calls the linear domain of force. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that there's a lot of energy in that idea, positive bravery, right, backed by commitment because it's important to you, or because, like in the military, it's our mission and we have our team. We're not going to let them down. Right. And so we have that commitment, right? Honor, courage, and commitment.
Yes. I just found my
courage and commitment really are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Right. Without commitment, you're not going to really have the courage.
Yeah.
Right. And courage without commitment kind of lacks the punch.
Yeah. You need to have the mindset that want to do it, then you got to take the action.
Right.
Well, you made me think of one thing, and I studied under Dr. Marty Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, positivity.
Yeah, positive psychology. But he's done a lot of work on optimism. So as you're saying what Dr. Hawkins did, it's making me think of just moving from a pessimistic explanatory style to an optimistic. So if you're going to try something, are you thinking pessimistically, like it's all going to go wrong, I'm never going to get better, or are you more like that optimistic, and there's ways that we know based on the research that you can move from that pessimistic mindset that would hold you back from taking action and trying something to that optimistic, saying like, it may be possible.
Yeah, that's a great distinction. And resiliency is kind of bounded by that future orientation, optimistic, positive mindset. Lack of resiliency generally will be experienced by someone who has the past orientation.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, also while we were talking about it, relating that to Dr. Hawkins, all of those lower order energies that he's calling the field of force versus, as opposed to power, which are kind of the higher order energies around which courage is the demarcation line, they are all past orientations, right? Anxiety, guilt, shame, even fear. You could say, well, fear is of something of the future, but it's because of a past experience that you have that fear that you're projecting into the future. So when you get out of that with courage, like you've left all that behind, you say, okay, we got a clean slate. All that energy, shame, guilt, not being enough, the regrets, you leave those behind. You say, I'm going to go forward with a clean slate. And that's really what optimism is. And so resilient people tend to be forward focused, optimistic, positive, and they're able to take their eyes off themselves and put them on someone else. Either in service, like we did in the military, or really in support.
And the great optimists are still realists too, because sometimes being someone who is considered an expert in positive psychology and getting my master's in positive psychology, it's not happyology. We're not, being optimistic means something really bad happened. There's some adversity that
but you're able
happened.
to discern the silver lining.
Yeah. So let's be realistic of what happened, but let's also be optimistic that we can overcome it. So just want to, for all of your listeners.
That's a really good point, because I think a lot of people think that in order to be a realist, you kind of have to be a skeptic.
That's not true.
It's not true. And
even for me in the world of positive psychology, I think I'm not like a lot of the people that are my colleagues in positive psychology, because I'm the Marine, number one, but there's hard edges. There's a lot of evidence in positive psychology of how you can achieve more and how you can, and it really is this realism. So optimism comes with acknowledging what's wrong. You can't just be Pollyanna and just manifest that everything's going to be okay and take no action. That's not what optimism is. It's recognizing realism and then being optimistic that we can take steps to move forward. Because if you don't believe that you can overcome something, that belief that you can't will stop you from taking action. Right. So
it's a perfect time for me to ask about toxic positivity. Catherine and I recently had a conversation about that. And we're not coming at it from a scientist perspective, is more of our, this is our experiential, view of it. So you said happyology. That reminded me of toxic positivity. Yeah. So give us your perspective on that.
And as someone that is from the field, I am the non-woo-woo, positive psychology, expert. I call myself a practitioner of positive psychology. If you look at the definition of positive psychology, and this is citing Marty Seligman's research, it's really it's known as a study of happiness, but it's really known as the study of happiness and well-being. And and well-being is more of, it's not just, are you happy all the time? It's like, are you living a good life? Do you have a high level of well-being?
Flourishing.
It's flourishing. Right. Yes, it's flourishing, which is.
And flourishing, you have ups and downs, goods and bads, happiness and periods of unhappiness.
And there are 5 things that we know with scientific certainty that contribute to well-being. Only one of them is positive emotions, happy. So that's why I say happyology. Like, people think that the study of positive psychology is just this one, if you're happy all the time, and if
let me know it.
Let me know it, clap your hands,
clap
right?
Your hands.
But it's just one of 5 things that help people live their best life and to flourish. So there's P is positive emotions. It's called PERMA. P is positive emotions, which is very important. The E is engagement. That's Csikszentmihalyi's research on getting into flow, right? Then you've got R, which is the quality of relationships, which we all know the quality of relationships are going to impact your well-being. The M is meaning, doing things that are meaningful to you, which for you as a SEAL, as a Marine, defending our country, that meaning. And then A is the accomplishment. Seeking to make an impact it could be in leading your family. It could be by defending your country. It could be anything. So if you really look at PERMA, the 5 elements, really like 1/5 of positive psychology is positive emotions.
So why do you think toxic positivity is people thinking because of social media that they have to project this happy, glad, I call it the happy, glad wrapper, regardless of what's going on in their life? It's not safe for them to project the downs, or that they're suffering, or that they need help.
Yeah, you're right. It's the ups and downs, and creating an expectation that you're always going to have positive emotions is unrealistic.
It's unrealistic.
In fact, when you experience positive emotions, it's in relation to the lows. Right. If you get to a high level of positive emotions, then that becomes the normal, and you don't feel the highs of it. So you almost have to feel the lows to appreciate the highs. Yeah, and someone that my research is focused on the A in PERMA. Like, how do you really help people be brave and be courageous to be able to accomplish the meaningful things to you, right? So now positive emotions is one thing that contributes to accomplishment. So, sometimes we think that once we accomplish that goal, then we're going to be happy. And that's actually not the way the happiness equation works. It's if you can try to generate positive emotions as you're pursuing the goals, then you'll achieve success. So there's a lot of interplay. It's not like they're all separate. Like, there's a lot of like interplay there.
Right. I imagine your time in the Marine really informed your thinking on all this in a different way than other academics, maybe. First, tell me about that. Like, how has the Marine Corps experience informed your view? And then bring in the team. And maybe these are the same thing, but like it's all about the team in the military. And like, bravery doesn't happen in a vacuum, right?
When
so there's a lot of intersection around team building, teamwork, team ability, and bravery.
Yeah, I think when you got people counting on you, like, you'll end up doing more for your teammates than what you would for yourself. Right. So I think the Marine Corps really impacted, I guess, my beliefs on bravery and my ability to build bravery. And I can tell a story, and it's somewhat embarrassing, but I'll tell you that I was pretty pathetic when I started my journey. So we're in San Diego.
Pathetic's a strong word.
So I really was. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota.
Right.
So small town girl. I ended up receiving this full ROTC scholarship, which means that I get to go to school anywhere in the United States on the Marine Corps, and then I would come out as an officer. Right. So, I mean, I was feeling pretty confident at that point. I'm like, I had the academics, I had the athletics, and I had the leadership to earn this scholarship. So I was flying out to San Diego to check into my ROTC unit, and I wanted to make a really good impression.
Why did you choose USD? I mean,
I chose USD because it's one of the 3 schools that offered me basically free room and board in addition. So they recruited me, and, not having a little bit meager background, like, that was very attractive to me. So they said, we'll pay for your housing and your food for all 4 years. And I flew out to San Diego, and if you grow up in the Midwest in Minnesota and the only thing you see on television is like the beaches of Southern California. Oh, exactly. So I came out, and the campus of University of San Diego
beautiful.
Is absolutely so beautiful because you've been there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a no-brainer.
Sold.
Yeah, sold. So I want to make a good impression. I was coming out, and most kids that go to USD, they just show up and they go to their orientation week.
There's a lot of wealthy, kind of snotty kids.
There are. Yeah. University of Spoiled Daughters. That's what USD stands for, right?
I've never heard that. That's a good one.
But if you're in ROTC, you got to show up a week early. And it's called like the ROTC orientation, which is kind of like a mini boot camp. So
it's like, baby hell week.
It's baby hell week. So I show up, and now I look back and I realize I probably didn't make the best decision on how I showed up, but I wanted to look professional. And it was summer and it was Southern California. So here's my outfit. I had these silk shorts that were hot pink with white polka dots. I had on a white shirt with the collar that matched the pants. And then I decided on not really high heels, but not like, I wore little pink pumps that matched perfectly. And even my nails were the same shade with little rhinestones and gold stripes to really complete the look.
Wow.
That's how I showed up.
It's impressive.
Are you envisioning like a scene from Reese Witherspoon on Legally Blonde? And then compare that to like what you think of Marine Corps like boot camp, right? And just you could probably imagine what happened. So like I tell you like, and then there was only 2 females that were there so when you show up to ROTC, there's the Navy ROTC, and then there's those of us who are Marine options. So there's mainly Navy people, and then there's a smaller. So all the Marines are separated. Like, okay, people who are Marine option go in the Marine Corps go over here. All the Navy people go over here. So we're separated. And then you look around, there's only 2 of us females, and the other one was a lot smarter than me and how she showed up. So I feel like the upperclassmen who were kind of our quote drill sergeants were just like salivating at like, we're going to get her.
To get a piece of this. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I even had one guy. This is a senior that I look up to. Like he was like chiseled. He just looked like the Marine. He was a senior. So he was about to graduate. And he actually came up to me on day 1 and said, "You will never make it as a Marine."
Ooh.
He did.
Wow.
And now it's interesting, and I don't know the research on this. Like some people might believe that, and it might take the wind out of their sails.
And others use it as a motivator.
Oh, yeah. Like I'm actually at this point so happy because there's so many moments that I wanted to quit, but I was like, oh no, I got to prove him.
I'm not going to give him the satisfaction.
I didn't want the satisfaction. Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
So that's how I showed up. And
that's turning a negative into a positive motivator. A negative stimulus into a positive motivator.
Yeah. And it was powerful in a good way. And then I'll just embarrass myself a little bit further. And you know this, probably one of the most shameful things.
I know how to embarrass myself.
Yeah.
You know me. That's amazing. You must have read up on me.
One of the most shameful things as a Marine is if you can't keep up in a run and you fall back.
Yeah. Same
thing in the SEALs?
Well, we have a saying, it's easier to stay up than to catch up, and you get goon squad if you fall behind.
Yeah. So
similar.
So in college, right, when I'm in ROTC, so it's Reserve Officer Training Corps. They're training us to become Marines. We're not Marine officers yet. We're training. But because we're Marines, we were doing PT like 2 to 3 times a week. You're
technically an enlisted Marine at that point, aren't you?
No, we're midshipmen. Now there were
because midshipmen is still like when I went to Officer Candidate School, I was an OC something, and technically I was paid as an enlisted, earning $500 a month.
They did put us on active duty in the summers because we had like they made us go like active duty, but we're considered a midshipman, which is kind of in between.
I guess I'm thinking about the academy. Like if you go to the academy, those 4 years count toward your retirement.
Okay. Not ROTC.
But not ROTC?
It's not the same.
Okay.
Mm-mm. No, it's a little bit different. But the point I was making is...
Yeah, anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I know. And
rabbit hole.
I have to make sure that I embarrass myself here. So I fell back in runs. And this was when I was in college. And then most of the Marines that I was training with were MESEPers. MESEPers are the enlisted Marines that go through a Marine enlistment commissioning program, right? So most of the people training with me as a Marine option midshipman are actually active duty Marines that are stationed at the college. So we're all training together. Most of them are Marines. Some of us.
Are they getting their degree as well?
They're getting their degree. So basically they're enlisted and they've got potential.
Yeah, the Navy had that program too. We called it Seaman to Admiral.
Seaman to Admiral, okay.
Yeah.
Kind of same thing.
Similar, yeah.
But I was falling back and it was shameful. Like I thought I was in great shape in Minnesota.
Did you still have your pumps on? Is that why?
I guess running a mile as someone that was required to do that, playing tennis in high school, or cheerleading, like, isn't the same as running the hills of Southern California. You know what the hills are like here. Oh my gosh. So, but here's what I learned about bravery is I had to believe that I could eventually get there. So it's really goes to Carol Dweck's work on mindset. Like I'm not a great runner yet. And I'm not great at climbing a rope yet. I'm not great at flying through the obstacle course yet. And it took me probably a couple of years, literally, for me to be able to keep up consistently. And remember that other female I told you about? She quit after a year. So then I was the only one. I was the only one. But the fact that I stuck with it, right, and I was able to accomplish it. And then when I went to officer candidate school, one of my proudest accomplishments is none of the stuff I've done in the last 20 years, but I was the top finisher of officer candidate school. And I had a better ranking than all those other Marines that I ran with, right?
Good run. That's cool.
Yeah. So I guess that taught me that, just because I can't now, and that's, I think, a big part of, bravery is just realizing you got to start. You got to just start taking action and work at it. And then over time you can get there. Right. And just because you don't have success right away.
It's also good to be able to laugh at yourself, right? And not take those things too seriously. In a perfect world, we'd all get enough of the nutrients we need for high-level performance from our diet alone. But this isn't a perfect world. This is the real world. And the truth is, everyone, even me, can use some help in finding your new personal best day after day, and that includes supplementation. For me, the first step has been nailing the basics. I start with the momentous 3, protein, creatine, and omega-3. These are the 3 nutrients that expert research shows as the foundation for long-term health. And if taken daily, that protocol supports every cellular function of the brain and the body, from muscle recovery and growth to focus and energy. The momentous 3 is the easiest way to drive the biggest impact on your health span. Momentous is a great company. They take it a step further. As a supplement company determined to bring trust and transparency to a space lacking in both, all their formulas are designed with human performance experts and are NSF and Informed Sports certified for use by professionals and collegiate athletes. That means sourcing ingredients for quality, not just what's cheapest. What's on the label is exactly what you get. Momentous is driven by what they call the Momentous Standard, and it has become synonymous with the industry's gold standard for quality and efficacy. So if you're like me and you want to make a true investment in your health, then join the best in human performance to be part of the change in raising the bar on supplements. Go to livemomentous.com, use the code DIVINE, D-I-V-I-N-E, for 20% off your new routine today. Again, livemomentous.com, livemomentous.com. Use the code DIVINE, D-I-V-I-N-E. That helps you be brave as well. What's been going through my mind is, that whole kind of embarrassing yourself. I had a boot camp moment like that.
Oh, really?
Because officer candidate school, same thing for the Navy, right? SEALs don't have their own. SEAL officers coming in from the civilian world, they send you to Navy officer
candidate school. Which is
school.
embarrassing. Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with being a special warfare operator. It's 4 months of compute drudgery. You know what I mean? We're doing like celestial navigation and learning, learning how to drive these little boats.
Naval weapons systems and all that stuff.
And all that big Navy stuff. And we're marching around in our little uniforms. And I'm like, I hope I never do this ever again. And I never did. But the day I showed up, I had just come from Manhattan where I was working as a CPA, right, for one of those big firms. And I just finished my MBA. And I was training karate every day. I'd become like this big karate guy. I had just gotten my black belt. And one of the things we did was train with these big sticks. They're called bows. Like this thing is monstrous.
Okay.
Like 6'2" long, big old stick. And I had the audacity to bring it with me on the bus to officer candidate school along with my gi. Cause I'm like, I'm Mr. Black Belt, right? I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And so I get off the bus with my green bag and this big stick. And the top hat he just stares at me. He goes, wow. He goes, what the hell are you going to do with that stick, sailor? I'm like, And he goes, I know where you can store that thing. Right. And I was like, oh my God.
See, look at how similar.
Already getting off to a good start.
My pink pumps and your stick, more similar.
We all got to learn the hard way, don't we?
Hey, something you said earlier just kind of stuck with me, which is resilience, right? I think everyone's talking about resilience. There's so many people that do work on resilience and teach resilience. One of the things that I believe, and I'm trying to bring forward to my clients that I work with, is not to wait until adversity strikes for you to be brave and courageous. So like, I believe in going after, seeking the discomfort, right? So, and so I don't want to be known as the resilience person. Now, if you learn how to build the skill of bravery by having a brave mindset, taking brave action, and building a brave tribe or brave relationships, when adversity strikes and challenges, then you're going to be resilient.
You'll be more prepared. You'll be more resilient.
But let's be like proactive than just reactive.
Right. Absolutely. In my book, The Way of the Seal, I talked about a similar same concept. I said, bring the challenge to you. Don't wait for the universe will smack you down. So why don't you just be proactive, like you said?
The best defense is a great offense, right?
So one of my programs called Kokoro is that, right? It's basically 50 hours of nonstop physical, mental, and emotional team training, loosely modeled after the Hell Week of the SEALs.
Wow.
And that idea, like people describe going through and they said, well, there's life before and there's life after. And life after is just easier because you've removed the necessary conditions for those other smackdowns to occur. Yeah. And that happens at, kind of a level that is beyond, probably our perception, but it does work that way.
That is amazing. Gosh, 100%. I love that experience.
Yeah.
Cool.
Talk about, back to this idea of like bravery and bravery alone or versus bravery with the team, right? Because this is a little bit tricky because a lot of times when you're on a team, you could say peer pressure or not wanting to let people down is kind of propelling you to do brave things, but it also could propel you to do reckless things. Back to that kind of continuum we're talking about. So that would be an interesting area of research as well.
Yeah, I think so. And so the research I did, I have basically 3 things that I think build the skill of bravery. And I just had a email exchange with Ryan Nemec. Dr. Ryan Nemec. He's the one who's done a lot of research on character strengths. And he actually asked this question to, there's a paper I'm not citing it the right way, but he was asking which of the character strengths do people want to develop the most? And he said, bravery is what people want to develop. It's one of the character strengths that people want to build. So how do you do that? So I find that it's 3 things and they're in combination. One of them is the teamwork that we're talking about. I'm getting to that. So one is you've got to believe that you can, and you do so much work on mindset. You could probably teach me a lot on that, but it's teaching people that you maybe can't do it now, but you can build the skills. So growth mindset, stress is enhancing mindset. And then 2 is taking brave action. We can talk about it later, but let's get to the relationships, building a brave tribe. I feel like if you build a team around you that is going to support your ability to be brave, that is one of the keys to becoming brave. If you stay in the same circle of people that tell you like, oh, don't do that, that's hard. Like, just stay comfortable. Why would you want to go do that hard thing? Like, you have to be proactive about finding your brave, I call it the brave tribe. Who are the people that scare you a little? Like, you scare me a little. Like, you should be in my brave tribe because I'm hearing like, you just said, would you have tried the SEALs if they opened up? And I'm like, oh gosh, that's a little scary. And this week, oh my gosh. But a brave tribe is finding the people that have maybe gone down the path before you, that have done more. Right. And they scare you a little bit. They're going to be the one to support you and say, you can do it. Like, so instead of, I think so many people just like, oh, well, this is the neighborhood I live in and here's the friends I have.
Yeah. So your team doesn't have to be your work team, right? Or your school team or your pickleball team. So you're talking about curating a team of brave individuals who inspire you, and you want to step up and they're going to support you. They're not going to judge you. Yes. That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes, and the reason I like using the word brave is sometimes it's scary for people to go up to someone that intimidates them. Like, people might be intimidated by you and everything you've accomplished and the book you've written. But
I have trouble building a brave tribe. I'm not sure who's going to be braver than you.
Like, who's, so for someone to go up to you, I would say, like, if you're someone that could help someone, hopefully they would be brave enough to email you, try to get in touch with you. So one thing is just people reaching out. They think of, there's no way someone would ever want to like help me. And so sometimes when I speak in like large audiences, I'll ask this question. I'll say like, how many of you genuinely enjoy like helping others achieve their goals, especially people that may be going down the path that you've already accomplished?
Yeah, pretty much everyone.
Everyone raises their hand. And then you ask the second question.
Have you ever been asked?
How many of you feel comfortable asking for help?
Oh, yeah.
So this is like the brave, like select the people that would be great members of your brave tribe, go and approach them and learn from them, you know. So it's a bravery of approaching people. It's a bravery of saying, I don't know how to do this. I need advice. Can you give me feedback?
Mm-hmm.
So if you curate that brave tribe, like that can be the team that that supports you.
And rarely have I heard of anyone reaching out to like one of those scary people who's like super successful and not getting a positive response.
Yeah.
I'm sure it happens, right? Like I've had to turn people down if like I'm on a book deadline or something like that.
Right.
Just simply don't have the time right now.
Right.
But generally, I always help out.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to lead large sales teams in the pharmaceutical like industry. Like I know sales too. You go to someone and you ask them, they say no, then you can't go home and have a fit and cry in the corner. You just go ask the next person, right? Yeah. If Mark is too busy because of a book deadline, who's the next person?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's talk about vulnerability and bravery. Right? Like I remember I even wrote this. I said, you know what, SEALs, we don't like the word vulnerable, right? We don't want to be vulnerable.
That's not macho.
We don't want to be vulnerable to the enemy, but we do want to be authentic and positively authentic, right? Because, you know, the pushback there was, well, you can be an authentic asshole, right? Right? Or an authentic, you know, mass murderer, right? Yeah, totally. I'm being my authentic self. It's not what I'm talking about. I think I was just trying to replace the word vulnerability with something else. But now I've kind of laid down my sword in that topic, right? I'm okay. Vulnerability works. It worked for Brene Brown, you know?
Yeah.
It works for me then.
Yeah.
But they almost go hand in glove, right?
They do.
They're not opposites. Vulnerability and bravery are, right? They really goes hand in hand.
They go hand in hand. You have to be brave to be vulnerable, to open up.
And you have to be vulnerable to be brave.
And you have to be vulnerable to be brave.
Right.
Yeah.
That means because, you know, when you're doing something scary, you are opening yourself up to attack or to some risk. Sort of risk or some sort of, you know, potential wound of some sort. So you have to expose yourself to that flank.
Expose yourself to failure. Like I failed in running the hills as fast as I could for a long time. You got to keep to it. Or the vulnerability of admitting like, I don't know, I need help. I think that's what I see, especially because most of my clients are corporate America. I mean, I spent 14 years leading in corporate America, and then I started my own business. So most of my clients are, you know, the companies that I used to work with and beyond there. But I feel like that vulnerability is one of those skills that we need to build more of, you know, for all people. But, you know, a lot of people think like, oh, to be a strong leader, like I need to have all the answers and not admit any mistakes and be a know-it-all. And that is, you know, the opposite of being a great leader. Like I teach and train leaders that be vulnerable, share the stories of where you screwed up. You will be such a better leader for it. But if you
be authentic in your vulnerability.
Be authentic,
right?
Yes.
It's not a tactic.
Yes.
Right?
Just be real.
It's got to be legitimate. Be real.
Just be real.
But just be willing to not always lead with the perfectionism.
Yeah.
Lead with the, you know, like I love how you led with the story of embarrassing the shit out of yourself. I have no problem leading.
I have so many
with my
stories.
stick story because it's pretty funny, but it was embarrassing at the time. But
and it's like for a leader too to be able to be vulnerable enough to say like, I don't think I have a solution to that. What do you all think? And to be able to be real and like I don't know. And I was telling you before the show started, I was a combat engineer officer, so I knew a little bit about all the different types of engineering.
You were not going to be an expert on any of it.
I'm not an expert in it. So for me to be a good leader, I couldn't tell my EOD tech how to disarm a bomb, right? I have to give them the mission. I have to trust them and say, what resources do you need to accomplish it? And I have to listen. I mean, yeah. So I think vulnerability is so critical to be brave, to admit what you don't know, just to be real, to ask for help. And that's kind of because instead of talking about it conceptually, I really try to bridge the gap. I want to keep things simple and actionable. Like when we talk about bravery, people are like, well, isn't it something you're born with? Can you build it? And we kind of talk about, I can use stoic quotes and all this, but I want to get down to like tangible things, and people can build bravery, you know, and it's really those three major like actions. But on brave relationships, you have to admit when you don't know when you need help, and ask for help.
Right.
That's going to help you accomplish it.
We have a culture that has glorified staunch individualism, and staunch individualists are walled off. They're anything but vulnerable, especially males. And so I'm sure a lot of the guys listening to this are like, this is one of those fluffy, flaky, concepts that you're talking about, Mark, like vulnerability. I'm brave, right? But talk about the difference between being brave and walled off versus being brave and open and vulnerable.
Well, I think what's going to resonate with your listeners, especially those macho men that think they're all of that, is if you want to accomplish more in life, you will get there faster with that bravery, with vulnerability.
Right.
And what I mean by that is people that don't want to be vulnerable, don't want to admit when they don't know and they ask for help. Like they might eventually get to that mountaintop of whatever that goal is, but it's going to take them a hell of a lot longer because they're just figuring it out on their own. Like if you can match that desire to achieve great things and be courageous enough to go after it and then have that vulnerability with it, what I know with certainty is you're going to get to that mountaintop so much higher because you're going to be able to ask the person, like, you've climbed this mountain before. What are the tricky parts? Can you give me a hand here? Right. So just practically speaking, you're going to be able to accomplish a lot more if you're both vulnerable and brave.
Right. I would offer that the key reason for vulnerability, or it's not just a reason, but it's also kind of the raw material of vulnerability is trust. Right. And so as a leader, right, you're really wanting people to trust you. But if you're not willing to trust them to be okay with your faults and your screw ups and, all the things that you might be embarrassed about, then you're not going to reciprocate. Right. And so trust is a reciprocal relationship. So if you're walled off thinking, well, I'm the leader, I'm not supposed to show that weakness, then you're not going to get the trust that you need from your team.
Yeah. Well, then they're going to be walled off.
You've got to be trustworthy enough to open up and be that vulnerable character in order to get the trust, which is the glue of the team. And then, together everyone achieves more. Bravery is a lot easier
when there's
you got
trust.
A team and there's trust and you got a team at your side.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, as you talk about trust, I've always thought about trust as like there's 4 different elements. And this comes from a book called The Trusted Advisor that I love. But they talk about if you want to build trust, there's credibility. Like, do I believe what you say? Like, do you know your craft where if you say something, I'm going to believe in what you're saying? Then there's reliability. Like, do I trust what you'll do? If you say you're going to do it, I know Mark is going to come through, or maybe Mark doesn't always do what he says.
Words are followed by deeds.
Yeah. Then the third element is intimacy, which is vulnerability. Like, can I show up and be my true self, right? It kind of relates to psychological safety, which is, do I feel comfortable? Like if I come to you and I open up and I share I don't know, like, how are you going to respond to that? Are you going to yell at me like you should know better? Or are you going to help me through that? So that intimacy. And then the last thing is, it's about self-orientation, the 4th element. Like, trust is if you really give a shit about me and I know that you really care about me, I'm going to have more trust. Or you really just, is it all about you? So.
Yeah. Is it a tactic?
Yeah. Is it a tactic? Exactly. Is it self-serving? Yeah.
Why do we have so little psychological safety in most of our organizational cultures?
I tackle this question day in and day out. It's really hard because what I see in organizations is to create psychological safety. What leaders think they need to do is just say, hey, I want to hear your thoughts. Please, if you have any ideas or questions, it's safe, bring it up. And then you stop there. And that's all that
or someone brings it up and then they get punished.
Exactly. And that's the third. So saying it's safe isn't enough, and this comes from what Amy Edmondson teaches from Harvard. She says, you got to tell people it's safe. Number 2, you can't just say, if you have a problem, can you bring it up? She says, number 2, you have to say, what concerns do you have? So you have to proactively ask in multiple ways. So I could ask you one-on-one, like, hey, what concerns do you have with the project? Or in a team meeting, like, who sees any concerns, right? And she said, that's not enough. And you hit it. You went right there. So the third most important way to develop psychological safety is how you respond when someone does speak up. Because a leader can say, oh, it's safe. Come to me if you need anything, or speak up if you need anything. And then, oh, what do you think? But if someone speaks up with an idea or I have a concern and then they are embarrassed or humiliated, it sends a message that it's not safe.
Right.
And so, leaders just need to learn how to do this. And I mean, I found that if you teach leaders, I think leadership, sometimes we can just look at leaders and go like, you're such bad leaders, but a lot of times we have to teach leaders how to lead. So if they learn how to respond, I mean, it's natural for leaders to have kind of a defensive response. Like, we're trying to move forward with this project and I want everyone to be positive, and someone is negative, and I want to just say like, all right, like, we're not going to listen to that, So sometimes they're trying to be positive and move forward. But, if you teach leaders, like, you've got to do these 3 things. And I teach leaders too, like, if someone brings up a concern or a question and you really don't want to hear it, the only thing you should do is say,
thank you.
Thank you. Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that concern or bringing up that question. I need some time to really think about it, and I'll circle back with you. And then when you take a little time to develop some emotional intelligence and then respond appropriately. Right. So, yeah.
So you've got a book, right?
The book is not out yet. The book is, I just had another meeting this morning with my publisher, and I'm getting very excited. This is my first really.
Do you have a title for it yet?
The Science of Bravery is going to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be out in May or June of 2025. And it's written as a parable.
Oh, that's cool.
I love
That's
parables.
really interesting.
I love parables. I think
it's a great way to learn.
Yeah, it's a great way to learn, especially because I'm really focused on.
And Ken Blanchard was one of your mentors. He used to do that.
Exactly. I was influenced by him. Love Ken Blanchard's books, like The New 1 Minute Manager. I love John Gordon. He's got like the Energy Bus, or he's got a lot of books there. So, and I use them a lot with my clients when I focus mainly on leadership development. Now I'm focusing on really the science of bravery. But when I would do like a change management workshop, everyone would read the book "Who Moved My Cheese," and it just so this parable is about a gentleman named Alex who has an okay life, but he's not really inspired by his work. He's always wanted to do more, and he basically meets a mentor and starts learning.
And he goes on his hero's journey.
He goes on his hero's journey, exactly. Yep. And at the end,
has his breakthrough, and he has a returning home, and
exactly.
Everybody's a transformed individual.
Yeah.
He's brave.
He's learned
Alex
that he is
the brave.
Alex the brave at the end. Yes.
That's terrific.
Yeah. So I just love the power of story.
Yeah.
I'm starting to write another book, which is all my geeky scientific stuff. So I just realized that, I spent I started in the Marine Corps, and then I spent, 14 years in corporate America. And then I've spent the last 8 years with my own leadership development business. And it's only been the last couple of years that I've gotten into academia. But I do want to make sure that like the next book is a little bit more like the traditional book of like defining what is bravery and then what are the steps, and here's all the studies and stories within it. But
you definitely need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. But this first one's
the credibility, that kind of the evidence-based science that the larger corporate clients will certainly want. In fact, that's pretty much, you nailed the reason why I went back to Pepperdine to get my PhD. Like, I was the OG in Navy SEAL leadership, and I defined a lot of principles and everything, but now there's a lot of other younger SEALs out there thumping their chests and getting noticed. And,
how do you differentiate yourself?
Right. And so now I'm kind of swimming in a red ocean there going, hey, remember me? I'm over here.
There are I feel like
oh yeah.
There's a lot of your fellow Navy SEALs that are doing great work, that are bringing great messages out there. And you know what I'm a little bit pissed about is it makes like just a Marine look not that cool. So would you guys stop pumping your chest and looking so cool? Because I'm never going to be a badass next to Navy SEALs.
I don't know what it is.
It's something special.
It's a momentary thing.
Yeah.
America needs heroes, right?
Yeah.
And so I think Marines are definitely in that. Like, a lot of Marines are my hero. Like, I look at some of the top Fortune 500 CEOs are former Marines. Yeah. There's something about the Marine Corps experience which just develops great leadership skills. You don't see SEALs running huge corporations. They're more entrepreneurial, like risk takers. Definitely creative. Like, I'm super creative. I definitely wouldn't consider myself a good organizational leader. I'm looking at Catherine. She's like, yeah, that's true. And she's my daughter. She's like, yeah, Dad, you suck at that.
I love it.
But I am creative as hell. And I'm a great teacher. I just need to hire, good people.
There is something about anytime, I'm sure it's the same way in the Navy SEALs, but like anytime I see like a gentleman with his hat that says Marine, or if someone I see an Eagle Globe and Anchor, there's a camaraderie and this mutual respect that as, people that I know that are serving the Air Force and, maybe the Army. It's not quite the same. So,
Right.
yeah, I love it.
I think the Marines are an extraordinary, like what a great experience, like formative experience. The same thing for me with the SEALs, but like you were in for 6 years or 8 years?
5.
5 years?
5. I had to do 4,
super
right?
solid. Yeah. The Marine Corps represent bravery, and you see it even in all their marketing. They're the only ones meeting their recruiting.
The proud.
Yeah, they're the only ones meeting their recruiting goals right now. Everyone else is down like 40%.
Is that right? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now everyone's across the board, 40% down. That's a big gap. Marine Corps, they got to line out the door.
Marketing geniuses.
They are
but
marketing
it's
geniuses, yeah.
The few, the proud. And I wonder, do we develop bravery in the Marine Corps, or do we just attract the people that are already brave?
It's a both and, yeah.
Probably both.
It's both.
Yeah, both.
And I think that's for, to transition back to the listeners, like, yeah, everyone has the capacity for bravery. Yes. You have past experiences where you've been brave, and you have past experiences where you probably ran with a tail between your leg.
And then you live with the regret.
And you live with regret. So just get over that shit.
Yes.
And remember what made you brave in those times you were brave. It was, one, you were deeply committed. It was super meaningful to you. You had a strong team by your back. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was an important goal. Boom. Those 4 things. Figure out those for the things that are important with you and sprinkle a little bravery mix in there and you're good.
And the absolute best moments in life are when you accomplish hard things.
Definitely.
So everything you really want in life is on the other side of something hard. And honestly, you said all your listeners that think, is this a bunch of soft, vulnerability stuff? Like maybe what I'm going to say is a little controversial.
I was joking because it's the hard.
It is the hard thing, but I'm going to say something that people may not like. Our world is getting too freaking soft.
It is getting soft,
and I
think
feel
everyone listening will agree with that.
Yeah, I think the pendulum has swung too far where we're just talking too much about just self-care and be easy on yourself and if it's hard, don't do it. And if there's obstacles, and even as I'm a parent of 2 teenage daughters, and even myself, I think I sometimes have tried to be too helpful, right? And so the younger generation, I think we're getting too soft, and I'm on a mission to teach people to be braver, to seek discomfort, do hard shit, because your life will be so much better.
Man, I love it.
Yeah, we need more of that.
I sent a message to RFK Jr. on his Twitter Sunday. He said, "Hey, this is Response Sunday. I'm going to respond to everybody."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, when you're done making America, or as we make America healthy again, let's make it strong again."
Yes.
Just bring back JFK's, your uncle's presidential fitness. Remember that?
Yeah, presidential fitness. Yeah,
presidential fitness, and we're doing push-ups and burpees. Why not? Why do we strip that out of schools? Bring it back. I know. Don't let the lawyers run this country anymore.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Good luck with your book. We'll have to have you come back and continue this discussion.
Love.
When your book's out.
I would love to, because I have just scratched the surface. I've just scratched the surface.
Well, I feel the same way. I'm just getting warmed up, right?
Yeah.
And there's, every time you open up a portal, there's you could go down that rabbit hole.
Just when you think like when I finished my capstone, I was like, okay, I've summarized all the research, and then you start digging in, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much more. And anything that I teach and you teach, it's not our ideas. The Stoics said it.
We were just talking about this coming over here, Kath and I.
Oh, really? Oh.
Right. I'm so glad you said that. So my respect for you just went through the roof. Most academics, right, when they do their research, they think they've discovered something new. And they're taught that, especially in the PhD. It's like, you're a problem finder, not a problem solver.
Yeah.
And you're going to add new. And I'm like, every single theory that I saw, I'm like, wait, that's just built upon knowledge that existed.
Yeah. There's nothing new. In fact, when I'm not working, or my favorite thing is to read Stoicism. It's my new obsession.
And awesome. Stoics and the yogis.
Exactly.
They had it nailed.
Yeah. So it's marrying ancient wisdom to modern science. So they knew what it was. Now we can do empirical studies to show that if they do these things. So I think the modern science is good to validate it.
That's exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that funny? That's exactly what we said. Yeah, I said that's good when you can bring that modern look and some sort of measurable validation to an ancient principle. But don't pretend that.
Don't pretend it's your idea.
Don't pretend that bravery is your idea, or grit isn't. not an idea that Angela Duckworth came up with, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
vulnerability is not an idea that Brene Brown came up with.
Very true.
You know, just kind
the
of
face
plumb
of
that
it.
vein, yeah.
And I do feel like, I think as people who are authors and speakers, we have a little bit of responsibility to give a little bit of credit and stand on people's shoulders.
You got to say who you're building your work on.
I'm standing on the shoulders of people.
Definitely.
And
I've always been very careful about that.
I want to try to keep the science of bravery like simple and actionable to my audience so they can start building it. And then, so that's kind of what I'm trying to do. But yeah, I'm using everyone's stuff. And who's your favorite Stoic? And do you have a favorite Stoic quote? I'm going to be interviewing now. I'm taking over.
Of course, it's Marcus Aurelius, which is my father's nickname for me when I was younger.
No way.
Yeah. I don't know if I have
you had Ryan Holiday on your podcast.
I did, yeah.
I was looking at it going, wow, because I'm a fangirl.
Cool. He's cool.
He's cool. Yeah.
Know thyself.
Know thyself. Mm-hmm.
It's probably the most powerful, and it's like, that's the arrow that pierces all others.
I have this little morning practice. We probably all have our little morning routines, but every morning I have these decks of Stoic quotes, and I just look through them, and I find a different one every day, and I read it.
Yeah.
And I do that contemplation, kind of more that ritual of okay, what does it say? What is the Stoic really trying? What were they really trying to suggest for the world? And what is this really saying to me? And it's such a
That's a great
powerful practice.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a contemplative practice is part of your morning ritual.
Yes.
It's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. It really gets me in that right mindset and challenges me to be the very best person every day. And without, skipping that, it wouldn't be the same. So for me, I do the Stoic quote, or doesn't it have to be a Stoic, but some type of a, quote of any philosopher.
Right.
And then just the 3 good things,
nice.
Gratitude. So, what we know about gratitude is it shouldn't just be always the same things every day. So for your listeners,
not a rote checklist.
It's family, health, whatever. It's supposed to be, what are the 3 good things over the last 24 hours that I appreciate? So your mind starts scanning for the positive. So I do that. And then I set my intentions for the day. And it takes me about 10 to 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it takes.
Weaning your mind, and it helps you be brave.
That's right. Exactly.
And if you miss it, you're like, oh, there's a reason I don't feel brave right now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Jill, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you coming down here. Appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Let us know how we can help.
All right. Back at you.
Hoo-yah.
Hoorah.
Hoo-yah.
So, hoorah. We're going to go back and forth.
Marine Corps says it wrong. Come on. What a fun and fascinating conversation with Jill today. Thanks so much for joining me here in person on the Mark Divine Show, Jill. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can find all the resources from this episode on my website, markdivine.com. You can find the video on our YouTube channel. Search for Mark Divine there. Also, you can connect with me on X, Instagram, and Facebook at Real Mark Divine or Mark Divine Leadership. Share ideas for topics and guests, and connect with me on LinkedIn if you're on that platform. Thanks to my incredible team, Catherine Devine and Jet Studios, for making this show possible and bringing my newsletter to you every week, which you can subscribe to at markdivine.com as well. Also, you want to check out my performance-focused supplements. Go to sealfitsupplements.com to learn more, or search for them on Amazon. Finally, if you haven't done so, please rate and review this show wherever you listen. It really helps us stay relevant. Remember, we all have the power to create change, so let's keep striving for a better world by being the change that we want to see in the world. Stay inspired, stay curious, and be uncommon. Hoo-yah. Divine out.